My name is Kevin Wordon. I'm the Head of Customer Strategy at Marketo, an Adobe company, and very much honoured to be your moderator for this panel, although I don't think we need to moderate too much because we have three fantastic, really highly skilled panellists with us today. Introducing them in no particular order, we have Mario from AustralianSuper. We've got John from GuildSuper and Georgie from HESTA. As the title and the summary of this session says, 4 out of 5 Australian super funds are looking to personalise their member experience by 2025. And you know what? That's just around the corner. What we're hoping you'll get from this session is some key learnings from these 3 fantastic panellists, as they've all embarked on the journey to personalising their member experience. What I'd like to do to kind of start and kick off is ask each one of the panellists just to provide a bit of an overview of their role, their organisation, and just where they are on that journey to personalised member experience. Georgie?
Thanks, Kevin. So yeah, my name's Georgie and I work for HESTA. I think we're all focused on helping our members achieve a better financial future. So at HESTA that means guiding and supporting our predominantly female members. They spend their life helping others, aren't very financially savvy. So really it's our very great honour to do everything we can to help them and get what they deserve in retirement. I would say I head up the campaigns team at HESTA. I would say we're very much on a learning journey, but hey, who doesn't want to stop learning? There is so much data and insights to gather, harness, assess, and really what we're focused on is driving a real mix between an engagement piece. It's a very long road, as we know, the superannuation journey in terms of through keeping our members through their working life, with key points of action at those moments of truth where members can make a difference to their financial future. So we have a very much a test and learn framework in place. We're achieving incredibly high engagement across our campaigns. Anywhere between 25 to 65% open rates is our sort of averages across obviously certain topics. And really what our challenge now going forward is the conversion. How do we get our members, how do we use our data to harness and acknowledge where a member's behaviour indicates, what are their triggers, how can we help them, what does that mean in terms of really identifying those action points. So yeah, that's...
Excellent, thank you, Georgie. John?
John from Guild Trustee Services. So we're a small fund. We're about 80,000 members, very similar demographic actually to Georgie's. We're about 87% female is our membership base. Very young and very broken employment. We're very much at the first steps of our digital journey. So I think we're fairly immature, to be quite honest, in regards to our digital experience at the moment. So opposed to my colleagues on the panel who their organisations are further down that journey than we are at the moment. So for us at the moment, we are looking at building out a digital capability. So I think some of you in the audience might relate to where we are in the journey. We'll say I'm a technology and a business person, not a marketing person, so I may have slightly different slants than my colleagues on the table as well. But we're basically looking at how do we build out our transition to more digital orientated organisation so we can provide a better member experience and help to provide better member outcomes.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. And last but not least, Mario.
Thank you. Yes, Mario Garrido. I'm the Head of Brand and Behaviour Change at AustralianSuper. AustralianSuper turned 10 years old not so long ago. We have $140 billion worth of member assets under management and just over 2.2 million members. The journey for us really started a couple of years ago when we started to look at what the role of brand was, what the role of AustralianSuper was in the community over the next 10 years. As we look back on the last 10 years, we went out into the market and we conducted research. We spoke to over 5,000 super fund members from all across the country. And what they told us is really what has helped us define what experience and what content and what engagement looks like at AustralianSuper. And the key and most compelling elements of that really come about a need to feel trust with your financial institution. So therefore, for us, it's how do we ensure that we are seen to be trustworthy by the community. The other one is confidence. The research told us that that belief that people are disengaged with their super fund, we don't believe is true. What we now understand is that confidence is what is actually stopping people from taking those actions that they need to help them achieve a better outcome. And of course, expectations have changed. Whereas 10 years ago, people were happy to have their money with a fund that simply and only produced a good investment return at a low price, expectations have increased significantly, and really the superannuation industry needs to really step up and lean into those expectations. And in order to respond to that, really the team that I look after at AustralianSuper is brand. We are the custodians of the AustralianSuper brand. We're fortunate enough to have a behavioural scientist on the books at AustralianSuper, and his role is really to try and help us understand the cognitive process by which us humans go through when trying to make complex financial decisions. And of course, newly appointed lifecycle automation team to leverage the Marketo platform and the CRM platform that we've recently brought on board.
Fantastic. Thanks for those introductions. Now, I know we're here to talk about the member experience and obviously in the context of superannuation, but sometimes it's good to look outside the industry, look at other businesses, B2C, B2B, products and services businesses. Do you have any examples of where you've come across a fantastic customer experience and you thought, you know what, I can learn from that and potentially bring that into my organisation for my members?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to look outside of your industry for examples, and I think in line with what our members' expectations are. One example that I would talk about is Red Cross Blood Donor Service. I'm a customer of theirs, so I receive their communications, but I also heard their head of marketing speak last year, and the way she broke it down was fantastic in its simplicity. And really, she identified, they identified, what their customer journey looked like, and the main point that she focused on was where the blockers were. So they had very clear issues about, you can imagine, okay, there's first of all getting people to set up an appointment, which is a decision in itself. There's then getting to turn up, which can be there's a practical element, but also it can be quite nerve-wracking. Some people don't like needles, so how do they allay that concern? And then there's, once they actually visit, how do they encourage retention and repeat visits? So the simplicity around how they described how they tackled that is something that we've certainly considered. In regard to our campaigns, we've taken that learning in the form of where our members are getting blocked. And the simplicity is really as much as reminders and assistance. If they don't open a campaign, we'll remind them about it, and often that's just the same communication but with a different subject line or try a different channel. Obviously there's quite a lot of complexity to that, but it can be as simple as just a different subject line. But really what we've found is a huge improvement is where we offer assistance. We see that they're trying to get into their online account, so we follow up with a message about, do you know how to reset your password? Because we know that's one of the most common issues. So sort of watching what's happening. So really that was a Red Cross learning for us in terms of how to continue to offer assistance. I also see a lot of their social media, being a customer, and the simplicity that they use is really fantastic in terms of their creative, but the point that brings you in is how they use their data, I think. So they say to me, okay, we need your blood type this week. And that's a very compelling story. It grabs your attention. So we've really tried to keep focusing on what is going to grab our members' attention. What does that mean? And obviously you can dive into data a lot, but really, as I said, we sort of test out our hypotheses on what does that group look like, what does that member look like in terms of what's going to grab their attention. Fantastic.
What about yourself, John?
I guess a bit like Georgie, I'm a customer of Wiggle, so sporting apparel type stuff. I was on the website about 11 o'clock at night buying too much Lycra and had a question about a product. There was a chat session was available, opened it up, asked the question, prompt response, gave me the information that I was after, followed up with an email confirming the conversation that had taken place through the chat session, met my needs, bought the products. When I was looking at from in regards to this session today, it was just reinforcing is doing the basics right. It doesn't have to always be the flashy stuff. Georgie's example there in regards to understanding the members going through, hey, they've tried to reset the password and has failed. It's getting your basics right. It doesn't always have to be the really flashy stuff. And if you're looking at it from a member's perspective and what they want from that service, they want a service that meets their needs, meets their expectations. So get your basics right before you look extending out to some of the flashier stuff.
Great. And how do you keep this vision of providing fantastic member experiences at the heart of what you do, in the heart of your business, whilst still trying to grow a business? What does balance look like? And I might throw over to Mario for this one.
Look, I think as I was thinking about that question, I've recently come across an organisation called Springy. I don't know if anyone's heard of Springy, but essentially if you've got preteen or teenage kids and you're trying to teach them about financial literacy, trying to teach them about saving money and the value of money, this is an absolutely beautiful app that has really solved the great problem of designing a product that really is perfect for two sides of the coin, both the parent trying to educate the child as well as the child wanting freedom and having money in their own pocket. And when I thought about why that was such an incredible experience, really was about three things for me. The first one is they are truly adding value in the lives of their customers, and that value fits favourably in the ecosystem that is the customer's life. So they didn't ask me to make any dramatic changes. They didn't ask me to stop doing something else. They worked out a way to add value and for that value to fit beautifully into my life. And then all of the communication that I received from them, I would say, stays true to that insight, stays true to the value they're trying to add. So when I think about that from an internal perspective and that balance that balance scorecard, we talk about customer experience really being about where an organisational need and a customer need overlaps. And for us, again, it really just comes back down to research and the insights that we've been able to gather from all of the research, from all of what we now understand to be member needs. I think a couple of other really important points there is that whatever you do, I think needs to align to your organisation already. You can't try and wedge something in that doesn't naturally fit. For us, of course, it is our fund purpose of helping members achieve their best possible retirement outcome. It also needs to be supported top down. We're very lucky at AustralianSuper where we have a board, CEO, and executive team that believe in the strength of brand, believe in the strength of insight, and delivering that through a compelling experience. But I think most of all, it's about telling a clear, consistent and compelling story repeatedly to everybody as often as possible, and to visualise that so that people truly understand how everything fits together. Everything from the fund purpose, to the brand promise, to the customer experience principles, to culture, and how all of that can be harnessed to impact members, for better outcomes for members in the most efficient and effective way.
I think you touched on an important point. So when I talk to customers a lot, they talk about wanting to become customer-centric, or in your case, member-centric.
Member-centric,
right? And often this directive is not coming from the very top. It's a customer experience or a member experience leader trying to push that through the business. So, Georgie, if I can throw to you, where does this vision come from, and how does it form a foundation of your organisation?
Yeah, I think, as you say, at the heart of the member experience and member outcomes are at the absolute heart of industry funds, and we absolutely live and breathe that at HESTA. But I think there's a fine balance in terms of what member outcomes means, because that has to be balanced, and I see it as a sort of a circle really, in terms of, yes, members are at the heart of it, but if you've got to, that's got to drive fund outcomes, because there's a health perspective, and it's also got to be about the employee outcomes. We have merged our marketing and people teams at HESTA, and that's because we believe that the employee experience is as important, and if we get that right, the member experiences follow. It's absolutely about empowering our people to be able to have those conversations, to be able to make those decisions. So I think it's absolutely, it's all about the members, but how you deliver that is the vision, really.
Great. Is that a top-down approach in your organisation? Is that personalised and member centricity driven from the top? And when did that take place, I guess? Absolutely.
I would say it's always been there.
Yep.
We're over 30 years old now, and we've reached a certain level of maturity, being over 30. We've got the travels out of the way, and I think it's absolutely top down, but it's bottom up as well. And I think that's about empowering people, that they believe in your vision, having a strategy that people can relate to. Not too complex. I think our current strategy is more simplified than the previous one, and I think that's not an easy thing to do in a big organisation. But when I've recently read about Unilever, and their strategy with over 400 brands is on one page. And if they can do it, I think we all can, in terms of really what is at the heart of it, and what does that drive. So I think it's, I think we're very fortunate at HESTA that the vision is absolutely embedded.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And what about yourself, John? You're earlier in this journey. Mm-hmm. How did change take place, and is that also driven from the top within your organisation around the member experience?
Yeah, very much so. So my background is I worked originally for 14 years at Coles Group, Coles Online. Mary and I were just having a chat before the session started. The environments are very different between like an FMCG organisation versus coming into superannuation. I think I've worked this is my third super fund. And none of those funds have we struggled to rally behind the member and to do the right thing. It's inherent to what superannuation is and why we work in this industry, because we're doing the right thing. We're doing a good job because we're trying to do the right thing by our members and give them the best adequacy at retirement. For us, what we do is we definitely comes from top down and looking for personas. So we use personas for our members and employers, and looking for driving what are the strategies and what are the tactical items that we're doing and how do they relate back to those personas. I think relating it back to our members and employers helps to reinforce what we're trying to do and why it's in those groups' best interests for what we're doing. So I think for us that tends to resonate for staff and helps to reinforce the benefits of what those activities are and how they're driving to member outcomes, and of course looking for our employees' best interests as well.
Excellent. I'd like to take the conversation towards kind of data, content, and technology. So can everyone give me some examples of some of those initial steps that you might have taken, looking at the big data that you might have had in your organisation, which might seem a bit overwhelming, and what were some of those quick wins that you saw straight up in the first few months, and how did that affect the member experience?
I'll start. With GTS, we don't have big data. So we're a small fund. As I said, we're on the early journey in regards to building our digital capability to provide better outcomes for members and employers. Our initial focus, which by initial being in the last couple of months, has been around a new service offering that we put to market called GuildSuper for our members. So a lot of the activity that we've been doing has been driving to communicate that offering out to our members. So rather than looking at answering your question, rather than looking at what data do we have and how do we leverage that, we looked at what was the experience that we wanted to try to give to our members in regards to that service offering. And we would basically look to work backwards. So rather than saying, well, we've got these 5 bits of data available and therefore that will shape the experience, we looked at what was the experience that we want to provide, what data do we need in order to provide that experience, both the data itself and technology personally coming out, what's the frequency of that data, so when do we need to be able to provide it. We looked at what that gap was and to close down that gap. So how do we acquire that information, how do we acquire the data, how do we consume it, how do we store it, and how do we access it using Marketo as our marketing platform. So for us, it wasn't about using initially the quick wins based on data that we have. It was taking a slightly longer term position of what's the experience that we want to try to provide to our members, and work backwards to then facilitate the data and the execution of it.
Excellent. And what about yourself, Mario, in terms of data? I'm assuming you have a wealth of data at your fingertips?
We have lots of data. I think everyone has lots of data. Look, I think if the question is the start, how did we start this? I don't think we started with what data do we have.
Yep.
I don't think we started with what technology do we need. I don't think we started with what platforms do we need. I think what we started was with what is the best role we can play in the lives of members based on the research that we had uncovered. How can we add the most amount of value in their life? And I think what it fundamentally came down to for us, similar to John, I've worked outside of superannuation, but when I looked outside of the industry and looked at member engagement or retention or experience, there wasn't a lot out there that we could actually draw upon or want to emulate. So we're obviously not interested in upselling or cross-selling or making customers sticky by flogging them products or any of that sort of stuff. So fundamentally for us, what it came down to was helping members take good, positive actions to help them achieve their best possible outcome. And really it's about that. It all centres around those actions, right? How can we help people take good, positive actions? And there's really three things that we did. The first one was understanding what those actions could be that we could help people with, and you may have heard us talk about the 5 C's before. So choosing the right fund, combining your super, checking your insurance, contributing a little bit more where you can, and continuous investment. So staying invested beyond retirement. And then once we understood those behaviours we wanted to impact, those actions, then it was about understanding the way humans make decisions and how we can help people take good actions. So that's where the role of behavioural economists comes in, helping us understand how do we get people to take those good actions. And then finally, it's about the experience that we provide. So once you understand what the actions are, and identify the members that could take those actions, how do we design that decision-making framework to help people make those decisions, to give them the confidence, the motivation, and then it's about the actual design of the content, about the experience that ensure that it is an effective one across that. So that was probably our starting point, and then the last question was, okay, so what data do we need and what platform do we need to make that happen?
Okay. And so let's talk about your technology stack then. That's a question for anyone at the table. So what does that kind of look like? You've got the data now, you understand the member experience. So what does your tech stack look like at the moment?
We're looking at you, John.
The data guy.
The data guy. Our technology at the moment is again, it's early on in the journey. I'll tell you what we're doing and what we're looking to move to. So for us at the moment, our stack and how we're using it from an automated perspective is to support the service offering I was mentioning before. We use data and time-driven triggers, data changes, in order to fire automated campaigns. So if we're looking at what a transaction a member has done, for example, a transaction just being a data change, we have different automated campaigns that are built off different criteria. So if a member has done X, Y, and Z and done it in a certain time frame or not done something in a certain time frame, then we'll fire a campaign. That campaign could either be SMS, it could be email, or it could fail over to an outbound consultant. So we've built basically automation through based on time and data triggers to fire into different types, different channels of campaigns. What we're doing at the moment is we're building our controls wrapped around that, because automation is brilliant unless it stops, and you need to make sure that you understand if something has stopped. So we're building our controls around that side, and then building our test and learn capability around A/B testing, multivariate testing, pretty basic stuff, but so we're just kind of starting our journey to make sure that what we've built from an automated perspective, so we can leverage scale, is as efficient and is resonating for our members. Because then if it doesn't resonate for the member, they're not going to get what they want out of it, and again, we're all here to provide for members' best outcomes. In regards to where we're going in the future, we're looking to leverage capability to consume new data sources that we don't consume today in order to provide services that we wish to provide in the future to our members and employers, to try to provide improved digital services and therefore provide better adequacy for our members. So looking at technologies that helps us to consume different data sources into one common location, so a warehouse, for example, and also technologies to control connections to third-party services. So there's always a new tech. It's the nature of the industry. There's always a new toy. There's always a new service that you can provide. So we're looking at technology stack to enable you to basically plug and play those new technologies as they come in without it being an inherently cost-effective and timely experience. So that'll help us to move and shape their member experience into the future.
Great. So we've got the data, we've got the tech stack. Now we're going to talk a bit about content. So typically when I talk to super funds or I talk to banks or, life insurance companies, they kick back a bit and go, well, how do we actually engage? It's potentially a lifetime worth of engagement. How do we provide content that's meaningful to our customers? So Georgie, I might start with you. What's your content strategy?
Yeah, great question. As you say, a lifetime, that's a long time. Well, we hope it is anyway. And that's a very long road to talk to our members. So I think acknowledging the pace and as I said before, those sort of moments of truth are really important. In terms of a content strategy point of view, we've worked very hard in terms of what that is at HESTA. It's very much underpinned by what our brand pillars are, what we stand for and what we think matters to our members. I think understanding your membership is key and what those nuances are. But we're actually quite predictable human beings in terms of mapping out what that looks like. At the very heart of super is your age. And that defines engagement in itself. And the other key one to me is balance. The more you have of something, the more that you'll notice it, which is a challenge for a lot of our members. But certainly, to me, that's a sort of an underpinning of how we use the content towards how we segment our audiences as well. But really, how we sort of wrap that all together, as John touched on, we're also building out a lot of automated campaigns. And ultimately, that's about their triggers, not just the superannuation triggers, but what's the member doing, what's their behaviour showing. So it's a bit of a push and pull at the moment in terms of what we can learn from our members, and I think data's giving us more and more insights every day. But what we do with that is sort of the focus going forward. Ultimately, it's about one-to-one and omni-channel. It doesn't matter where you start talking to us, the conversation continues wherever you engage us. So that's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it wouldn't be a conference, in 2019 if we didn't talk about AI, artificial intelligence. So I want to understand, what does the future of member engagement look like in the context of artificial intelligence? Are you adopting it, or where do you think, what will be the first point of adoption for superannuation funds?
I guess for me, first point of adoption, so my background is also operations, so I'll put operations hat on, is straight through processing your back end as much as possible. So I use AI as, sounds really fancy in robotics, but it's just scripts. If you're looking at automating your back end, so taking it from a position of where a member wants to do an investment option change, and that's great, whether it's on a call center or whether it's through a website or an app, and that's great, we can execute that in 3 days' time, to changing that conversation to, that's great, that's just been completed. So taking away, it's two sides of one coin. So on one hand, it's going to improve your cost of doing business. It'll remove some operational costs, which means you can reinvest that back into improved services for members and employers. On the other hand, it's going to provide a better member experience because you can execute it on the spot at that point in time. So looking at automating your back end, those that are self-administered, good luck to you, and you're going to find that an easier job than the administrators. But there's still opportunities with the administrators to go down that path. I think on the front end side, in the short term, it's probably going to be answering the simpler questions to take loads away from contact centres. Some places are already doing that. If you can answer the simple questions, they can reset my password, whether that's through a chatbot or whatever the mechanism may be, to let a member engage in the way they want to engage through technology to answer the simple questions, take the load away from your contact centre so they can have a better conversation with the members when they call in regards to where they are, what their adequacy is like, what their insurance is like, and making sure that we're trying to provide the best possible services for members and employers when they do contact us. I think there's also an opportunity in the front end with AI to do basic data collection execution services. So it's almost like the front end version of the back end automation. So if you're looking at a member who wants to engage, wants to do a investment option change again as an example, they've chosen to engage that through a chat session, whether it's through a bot session. There's no reason why you can't automate that process. So if the member has chosen to engage through that channel, let them engage. That's their choice. And then execute that as a straight-through process. So I think there's opportunities on the AI for the basic answering simple questions, automation, be that on the front end and on the back end.
Fantastic. What about yourself, Georgie? I believe you have some grand plans in place or some stuff in place already around artificial intelligence. What can you share with us today?
Yeah, we absolutely have some very ambitious plans around AI, but at the heart of it is what John touched on in terms of how you use it, in terms of what the member needs. How is it going to add value to the member and drive their financial future? So it's very much in that context. We have a long way to go in terms of, really being able to support our members as on scale. But I suppose it's recognising the need for the different channels as we go forward. I mean, we have a chatbot and click to chat. But I think what's interesting is that I've read a recent McKinsey study that showed that a lot of companies have invested in chatbots at some cost, but to maintain them as well, I suppose. But it hasn't driven down costs in other areas and in other channels. People are still calling the call centre. So I think it's that balance of how we support our members and what their needs are. So yeah, we have very ambitious plans, but they're very cognizant of where our members are at and what they need, and we're only going to develop something that's going to add value to them.
Yeah. And I think you touched on a point around the human touch there, and making sure that we talk about automation, we talk about technology, but obviously that human interaction is very, very important. I think we often fail to remember that. So what does the future of kind of human connection look like for you around the member experience? When do you hand off to a human? That's probably the most important question.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And this will change over time. Certainly something that I spend a lot of time thinking about is essentially our role in marketing, and how do we hand off or support, provide great leads to our advice team. And that's I think, getting easier with data in terms of being able to show where members show interest. We have a campaign in place, an automated triggered campaign for our older members talking about our income stream product. And that has direct leads off to our advice team when they want it. It's up to them to make an appointment to call. It's about offering the service, it's about offering them that help. And essentially we're watching that pretty closely in terms of members' behaviour and trying to learn from it. Because I think, we have a segmentation model that we use, and that very much, at the heart of that for us is what their financial well-being is, and that will define how they want to talk to us, as Mario touched on in terms of regard to confidence. That's often the biggest blocker of why they want to talk to us or not. And really defines, I think, whether they want to read it on a website versus have a chat to someone on the phone. So I suppose it's being there when they need it, but really trying to read the signals as we go along.
Yep. What about yourself, Mario, in terms of the human touch?
Look, I think it's a very interesting topic, as you said, Georgie. Look, I think obviously right now we're regulated in some degrees to have a human involved, which is particularly more in the advice channel. What that looks like is in the future, I don't know. But one thing I would say is that robots cannot show empathy. Robots cannot be creative in their approach to problem solving. and robots will never have or display the passion that a human can when interacting with another human, particularly in really important and impactful moments. So I think there will always be a role for humans, and I think the more successful organisations around the world are really understanding where the role for a human is and where they can get more efficiency by putting a robot in place. Hotels are doing that quite well, automating the check-in system, but in the heavy service side of things is still including a human. And then of course, the rule of scarcity will play in. I think as human interaction diminishes, the value of human interaction will actually increase. And I think we won't be completely replaced by the robots just yet.
Great. I'm conscious of time. We've actually got a few great questions that have come through from the audience as well. So I might get some closing thoughts from the panel as well. Is there anything that the individuals in this audience can take away, a key learning kind of to close off before we jump into the questions? Give us a start.
Yeah, look, I think it's been a great journey. I think we're all kind of roughly in the same space with regards to maturity levels. But for me, going back to the research that we've conducted, what has changed is expectations, right? Technology, platforms. Everything is maturing, so social media is maturing, digital is maturing, mobile is maturing. People's expectations are not being set by the interactions they have with us as super funds, they're being set by all the other interactions that they have. So their expectations are high of us, and they're all from a experience perspective, but also from an involvement perspective in their life. And I think that expectation is, what are you doing with all this information that you're collecting? What are you doing with all these interactions? What are you doing with all this data? And I think that expectation is about, you've got big data. We want big relevance. We want big personalisation. We want big help, and we want big wisdom that helps me achieve my best possible outcome. I think for me that's what it boils down to.
Fantastic. What about yourself, John?
Look, I'm a fairly pragmatic sort of person. So I think for me, don't skimp your basics. I think it's something I mentioned at the start. So we all know we should do A/B testing or multivariate testing, but not everyone does it, to be quite honest. Or if you're doing it, you're not doing it as well as maybe potentially you could. So if we're trying to let the member tell us what works for them, rather than us predisposing what we think should work for the member. Test and learn. Find out what resonates for your members and not what you think is going to resonate for them. Because in the end, we're here for them. We're here to provide a service for them, so they're going to have the best possible adequacy at retirement and provide great services between now and then. So let them tell you what works and what resonates. So don't predispose. Test and learn, and then test and learn again.
Great. And last but not least, Georgie.
Yeah, I'd have to agree in terms of expectations. I think that's one of our biggest challenges, that our members are doing the expectations they have and the experiences they have with Apple, Amazon, is what's driving and what we need to keep up with. So whatever, as you say, whatever you can use to ensure that your members. It comes back to that trust too, I think, in terms of your role in their lives. You can absolutely be their most trusted financial services brand, particularly in the current climate, and that's a very unique position, I think, for super funds to play. And I think what's shifting is that our members actually expect us to know them. They expect us to use their data in an appropriate way. It's like the Red Cross knowing my blood type. Of course I expect you to know that, and I expect you to use it to my advantage and to help me. But really I think it's always back to the member, and it's always back to getting them retirement ready, and that is always our North Star.
Fantastic. Now, it looks like we've just run it just a little bit over time, so I wanted to thank our three panellists today. I'm sure they'll be around, so if you have those questions that you wanted to ask them, please hit them up after this. I'd just like to, everyone put their hands together for our fearless three panellists. Thank you.